Hello and very warm welcome at Amish Cycle 5858. I am Amish Cycle. Following news have been reported by American, European, Asian, African, Australian news channels and the news agencies. So please, let's go to the headlines.
Tonight, breaking news just in. The new statement tonight from former star NFL quarterback Mark Sanchez. Authorities say he will now face a felony charge after an alleged altercation. With Mark Sanchez said just moments ago, tonight the allegations against him. Sanchez arrested in his hospital bed after an altercation with a 69-year-old delivery truck driver. Tonight here, the surveillance images showing him appearing to stumble just after the incident. Also tonight, the government shutdown now entering its second week. Millions of Americans affected. And tonight, the Transportation Secretary now sounding the alarm about air traffic controllers. Some calling in, he said the workers patrolling our airspace are asking, how am I going to pay my mortgage? Tonight, no sign Republicans and Democrats are any closer to any compromise, while members of Congress are still getting paid. Tonight, the showdown over President Trump's move to deploy the National Guard to more American cities. Hundreds of Texas National Guardsmen heading to Chicago. Tonight, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker calling the potential deployment Trump's invasion. And the Trump-appointed judge who says what they're saying, their reason for sending the Guard into Portland is, quote, simply untethered to the facts. Tonight, news in the Jeffrey Epstein case, Ghislaine Maxwell's attempt at an appeal to get her conviction overturned, the Supreme Court refusing to take up the case, and President Trump just moments ago when asked if he would pardon Ghislaine Maxwell. Tonight, the judge's home up in flames, 3 people hurt inside, but authorities have just revealed about the cause. The talks underway over this potential peace plan for Israel and Hamas, and to get the hostages out. What President Trump said late today about these critical talks right now. The rescue underway at this hour, 1,000 hikers trapped in a snowstorm on Mount Everest. Back in the U.S. tonight, the record heat across the Midwest and the Northeast, and now the big change coming. Ginger Z is here. The shocking images tonight, the Americans among a group of tourists charged by an elephant while on safari for capsizing their boat. Tonight, amid so much confusion, should you get the COVID shot? The new vaccine guidance from the CDC, what officials are now recommending. And Taylor Swift making history with her album and movie this weekend, the first ever to reach #1 in both categories on the same weekend. And tonight, the new interview right here, the question she called shockingly offensive. From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight.
Fox News alert. Violent, chaotic. This is Chicago. Another weekend of this. Federal agents were forced to fend off violent rioters who were throwing rocks at them and screaming and cursing at them. And the White House has authorized at least 300 Illinois National Guard troops to try to deal with the growing crime crisis. And just today, Illinois filed a lawsuit against the Trump administration over the deployment of help in that city. I'm Harris Faulkner. You are in the Faulkner Focus. Outside Chicago, Broadview is the site of an illegal immigrant processing center that has been in our focus for days now. Border Patrol agents there are in danger, and they had to call in local help for a massive group of protesters which surrounded them. All of this over the weekend. Chicago police officers say their bosses ordered them to stay away. Listen to the dispatch audio here.
And again, per the chief of patrol, we have all the units that for 999, chief of patrol said all units clear out from there. We're not sending anybody over to that location.
We're not sending anybody over to that location. The nation's largest police union with full-throated condemnation. The group's president said members are shocked and appalled, adding they believe that when an officer calls for assistance, you answer, no matter what. We are seeing all of this with our own eyes, but Democrats say they don't need any help from President Trump. And they're even trying to flip the switch and blame the president.
They want mayhem on the ground. They want to create the war zone so that they can send in even more troops.
It's a misuse of the National Guard. They're not needed in this particular role.
There is no emergency here in Chicago or in the state of Illinois. The only crisis that we have is the chaos that has been caused by Donald Trump and his administration.
Senior correspondent Mike Tobin is in Broadview with more on this, Mike.
Eddie Harris, we're hearing from a lot of rank-and-file Chicago cops who say that they are outraged that they were ordered to stand down after federal agents were attacked. The communication for the stand down appears to have come from the chief of patrol himself.
On this Monday night, Gaza peace talks. Negotiations begin between Israel and Hamas over the U.S. president's proposal.
All sides of this conflict agree that this war needs to end.
The cautious optimism among Palestinians. Alberta teachers on strike.
We're in a crisis right now with what's happening in our schools.
How parents are coping with canceled classes. Trump's latest tariff threat on the eve of his meeting with Canada's Prime Minister. A newborn abandoned on a Quebec doorstep. The baby's condition and the search for his parents. Plus, pitch perfect.
I couldn't imagine a better feeling right now.
The Toronto Blue Jays rookie dominated the diamond.
Global National with Donna Friesen. Reporting tonight, Jeff Semple.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. Delegations from Israel and Hamas, along with mediators, have now arrived in Egypt for high-stakes talks on a U.S. proposed peace plan for Gaza. President Trump is calling for both sides to move fast and forge ahead with his 20-point plan. It includes the release of all remaining hostages held by Hamas in exchange for nearly 2,000 Palestinians in Israeli prisons. Hamas must fully disarm, and Israel must agree to a complete withdrawal from Gaza. Hopes are high, but there remain a number of sticking points, including who would govern Gaza going forward. Vincent McAvini has our top story tonight.
Israel's deadly bombing campaign in Gaza hasn't stopped as negotiations appear to be making a breakthrough. Some Palestinians are, though, daring to dream that peace may finally be close. The entire world is united in its desire to end the war and to establish a Palestinian state. I see a dim light at the end of the tunnel. Over the border in the Egyptian holiday resort of Sharm el-Sheikh, Hamas negotiators have begun indirect talks with Israel on the peace proposal from US President Donald Trump. Since their last round of talks, Hamas's team, led by Khalil al-Hayya, was targeted with an airstrike by Israel in Qatar. Al-Hayya's own son was one of the victims. But with so much international support for the plan, particularly from Muslim nations, including Saudi Arabia and the UAE, personal grievances are being put aside, with Hamas reportedly open to more concessions, including giving up heavier weapons.
The countries of the world, a lot of the countries surrounding Israel, frankly, Muslim, Arab, and many others, have had great meetings with Hamas, and it looks like it's working.
In Israel, the second anniversary of Hamas's October 7th attack is being marked by memorial services for those killed and prayers for the hostages, alive and deceased, who Hamas have signalled they will return, putting Prime Minister Netanyahu under significant domestic pressure.
In recent weeks and recent months, we've seen polls showing at least Israel is saying, look, we need this war to end, we need to get the hostages home, and there needs to be a change in the approach that we've seen so far from Netanyahu. So I do think that pressure has been building, but again, it really is Trump's actions, I would say, that put the thumb on the scale for Netanyahu.
There may be renewed momentum on both sides to end this war, but in past rounds it's been in the details, like the sequencing and timeline of returns and withdrawals, where things have...
Liberté, égalité, actualité.
Hello and a very warm welcome. If you're just joining us, you're watching Daybreak here on France 24. These are the headlines this hour. 2 days to try and talk very divided sides around and form a working government. Having handed in his resignation Monday, France's Prime Minister told he has until tomorrow to find a solution, but some party leaders are refusing to even come in for talks with the others. Meanwhile, indirect talks between Israel and Hamas underway in Egypt aimed at securing the release of the remaining hostages in exchange for Palestinians being held and potentially aimed at forming a long-lasting ceasefire. Those talks taking place as Israel marks 2 years since the attack by Hamas, the deadliest one in Israel's history, one that sparked the current onslaught and ongoing annihilation of Gaza.
This is DW News, and these are our top stories. In
Indirect peace talks have begun between Israel and Hamas in Egypt with the aim of ending the 2-year-old war in Gaza. US President Donald Trump says he hopes the negotiations will lead to a hostage release and an end to the fighting this week. Hamas has accepted some of the plan, including the release of all the hostages. President Emmanuel Macron has asked the outgoing Prime Minister to hold last-ditch talks to find a way out of France's political crisis. Sébastien Lecornu resigned after less than a month in office. He was criticised for failing to bring enough new faces into the cabinet. Lecornu was the 5th French premier in 2 years. The Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine has been awarded to 3 scientists for their discoveries relating to the immune system. Fred Ramsdell, Shimon Sakaguchi, and Mary Brunko examined how the immune system is kept under control so it can fight foreign invaders without attacking the body's own cells. This is DW News for Berlin. You'll find more on our website, that's dw.com.
Today, 2 years since the October 7 attacks, delegates from Israel and Hamas continue negotiations in Egypt over Donald Trump's peace plan. Australian activists detained in Israel allege serious mistreatments and dystopian conditions in custody. 60-year-old man faces court charged with more than 24 offences over a shooting spree in Sydney's inner west. Parliament to consider new laws to establish a 000 custodian as the communications minister meets with telco bosses. And the season of supermoons begins tonight with 3 lunar events expected in the coming months. Hello and welcome to ABC News. I'm Ross Childs. 2 years on from the October 7th attacks, indirect talks between Israel and Hamas on a potential peace deal have begun in Egypt. The meetings are taking place in Sharm el-Sheikh in a bid to secure a lasting ceasefire in Gaza and the return of Israeli hostages. America's editor John Lyons has the details.
So all the key parties have now come together to try to bring an end to this 2-year war in Gaza. The delegations are meeting in Egypt in the resort city of Sharm el-Sheikh. It'll be Qatar and Egypt will play the role of mediators. Israel, the US and Hamas will also have representatives. The Israeli and Hamas officials will have no direct contact. They're likely to be in the same hotel, but the Qatari and Egyptian delegations, it's reported, will be going from one delegation to the other, trying to reach an agreement here. The US has sent 2 of Donald Trump's most trusted advisors, Jared Kushner, his son-in-law, and Steve Witkoff, his special envoy. Hamas, in the lead-up to this, has agreed to 2 key points. Last week, Donald Trump released a 20-point plan to bring an end to this war. Hamas has agreed the release of all hostages, all 48 Israeli hostages still in Gaza. 20 of them are believed to still be alive and 28 tragically are deceased. Hamas has also agreed to hand over the governance of Gaza to what they call a Palestinian body of independent technocrats. However, Hamas has said in its response that it supports a comprehensive national position of which Hamas will be a member and which it will contribute to sensibly. That last condition, or that last point that Hamas has raised, is likely to be one Israel won't agree to. The other key point that could be a problem for agreement is the list of the Palestinians who will be released in exchange for the 48 hostages. Under Donald Trump's plan, about 2,000 Palestinians will be released, and it will be some of those Palestinian prisoners currently held in Israeli jails who the Israelis might dispute and reject on.
Once a day when you become a model. Why were you not in hospital when your brother passed?
This is Asia Now.
It's
12 p.m. in Singapore and Hong Kong, 9:30 in New Delhi, and 11 o'clock in Jakarta. I'm Rani Samtani at this hour. Rescuers scramble as deadly floods devastate Nepal and India. The death toll has risen to more than 70. Extreme downpours have triggered landslides, collapsed bridges, and destroyed roads. The Indian Medical Association condemns the arrest of a doctor over the deaths of 14 children who were prescribed a banned cough syrup. And 2 years since the war in Gaza began, Israel and Hamas launched a new round of indirect ceasefire talks in Egypt. U.S. President Donald Trump says he expects a deal will be reached soon.
Africa News. The news.
The new quota system on cobalt will be permanently banned from the Democratic Republic of the Congo, President Felix Tshisekedi has warned. The DRC is the world's top producer of the metal, which is critical to the manufacture of electric batteries. In February, Kinshasa blocked all exports as prices hit a record low. Last month, it announced a new quota system based on historical exports and due to come into effect on October 16th. Miners will be able to ship just over 18,000 tons of cobalt for the rest of this year, with annual caps of just over 96,000 tons for 2026 and 2027. Tshisekedi reportedly told his cabinet on Friday that he would apply exemplary sanctions to anyone violating the new rules. He said the system would be an effective lever to influence the market after what he called years of predatory strategies. The crackdown comes as violence in the country's mineral-rich east continues to escalate despite US efforts towards a peace deal.
The newly inaugurated President Arthur Peter Mutharika of Malawi has moved swiftly to form a government, appointing a partial cabinet just a day after his swearing-in ceremony. The key appointment is Joseph Mwanamveka, who returns to the role of finance minister, a position he held from 2016 to 2020. He faces immediate challenges, including severe foreign exchange shortages, fuel scarcity, and rising living costs. Other notable appointments include Enoch Chihanya as second vice president and George Chaponda as foreign affairs minister. President his return to power comes after a landslide electoral victory last month.
Skilled Hamas lead in October 2023 gathered in southern Israel to hold a commemoration ceremony Monday on the eve of the attack's second anniversary. They carried flowers and tended to the graves. This man who lost father and had other relatives taken captive said he's optimistic about Trump's plan.
Very optimistic. And I'm very sad that it didn't happen 3 years ago. It's going to save us many lives. It's good that it's happening now. It's too late for my family.
Names of the victims. In an interview with Euronews, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu criticized European governments for their stance on Palestine.
Europe has been absent because Europe has basically caved in to Palestinian terrorism, to radical Islamist minorities in their midst, and they basically said,
Whatever you get your podcast.
Welcome back to Breakfast. Just a recap of our top stories for you this Tuesday. Indirect peace talks between Hamas and Israel are expected to continue 2 years on from the October 7th attacks. President Trump claims a deal will be reached soon. The Prime Minister has condemned plans for pro-Palestine protests scheduled today. He's calling them un-British. Sir Keir Starmer says the planned action shows a lack of respect. The Met Police say they've smashed an international gang suspected of smuggling up to 40,000 stolen phones from the UK to China in the last year. And for the first time ever, renewable energy has produced more of the world's electricity than coal. This is according to the research of global energy trends. So returning to our top story, and today marks 2 years since the deadly attacks on October 7th. More than 1,200 people were killed and 251 others were taken hostage. Sky's Middle East correspondent Adam Parsons visited a kibbutz which was overrun by Hamas militants and spoke to former residents about the ordeal.
He would love to speak to you. He would love to hear your stories. He would tell his stories. It's a big sorrow in my heart that Grandpa Odette Lifshitz has to end his life.
And good evening. We begin tonight with a stunning felony charge against former NFL star Mark Sanchez after an alleged parking dispute turned violent. Police say he got into a brutal altercation at a parking spot in Indianapolis. The former Jets quarterback and current Fox Sports analyst was originally charged with a string of misdemeanors, but he's now facing a level 5 felony battery for allegedly attacking a 69-year-old delivery driver. A warning to viewers, these next images are graphic. That driver now recovering in the hospital after police say he suffered significant and severe injuries. Marion County Prosecutor Ryan Mears joins Top Story now. Mr. Prosecutor, thanks so much for joining our broadcast. I appreciate that. My first question to you, when you saw the evidence, whether it be the surveillance video or what investigators brought to you, what did you think about this crime?
That was completely unnecessary. That this was one of those situations that didn't need to occur. You have a 38-year-old former professional athlete who is alleged to be involved in a violent confrontation with a 69-year-old man, which is literally over a parking spot. And under those circumstances, no one should walk away with serious injuries, yet that's what we're dealing with.
You know, you look at the injuries of the victim in this case, the 69-year-old man you mentioned. I mean, they look pretty severe. There's a gash to the face. There's a neck brace. What is your understanding of how this person is doing tonight?
Well, unfortunately, this person sustained very significant injuries as a result of this incident, and that's why we made the decision to file the charges today, because it needed to reflect the seriousness of what took place. This individual is dealing with not only significant pain, but also very likely facing the potential of having to deal with permanent scarring on their body. And fortunately, we've been able to reach out to him that he's in good spirits and he's progressing, but he's progressing very slowly. And this is one of those events that's probably going to stay with him the rest of his life.
So I don't know if...
Tonight, the president's showdown with Democratic-led cities is escalating, with National Guard troops right now on their way to Illinois, even as the governor pushes back. We've got a live report from Chicago, a status check on where things stand, and what the president now seems to be alluding to late today in the Oval Office. Plus, a former NFL quarterback in deeper legal hot water tonight after prosecutors added a felony to Mark Sanchez's list of charges. But we're just learning about the attack, according to the alleged victim, in a new lawsuit. Then a lot of diplomatic breath holding right now as Israel and Hamas try to hash out the details of a plan to try to end the war in Gaza. The sticking points still up in the air before any hostages are freed. Our Richard Engel will join us. Plus, the wild scenes on Mount Everest with hundreds of hikers stranded, how rescuers are trying to get them down after a blizzard hammered the mountain in that race against time. Plus, growing questions around a massive fire, huge fire that burned down the house of a South Carolina state judge. What we're just hearing from the state's governor about it, coming up a little bit later in the show. Hey there, I'm Hallie, and let's tell you what's happening right now, coast to coast, because it sounds like hundreds more National Guard troops are on their way to the Midwest, to the city of Chicago, as the governor of Illinois accuses President Trump of creating a war.
Protests in the streets, lawsuits in the courts. The battle lines are drawn after the commander-in-chief tries to order the National Guard into cities run by Democrats.
Donald Trump is using our service members as political props. Also tonight, rescue workers try to save hundreds of hikers trapped by snow more than halfway up Mount Everest.
We're in the process of being intercepted. CBS News cameras come within 200 feet of a Chinese fighter jet as it intercepts a Canadian plane, enforcing UN sanctions.
And under a full moon, we will wax sentimental about the mooncake.
It tastes like childhood.
From CBS News headquarters in New York, this is the CBS Evening News.
Jeff Bennett.
And I'm Amna Navaz. On the News Hour tonight, President Trump's effort to deploy more National Guard troops gets caught up in the courts. We hear from the governor of one of the Democratic-led states being targeted.
After agreeing to some parts of the president's peace plan, Hamas negotiates with Israel for an end to the devastating 2-year war in Gaza.
And a new term. The U.S. Supreme Court prepares to take up a case on the controversial practice of conversion therapy for LGBTQ youth.
The care that is at stake in this process. We are less speak free.
Ends up stacking up shame that a lot of people never recover from.
Police report. I'm Naveen. Negotiating after Hamas and Israel agreed to parts of President Trump's 20-point plan for a Gaza ceasefire. On Friday, Trump wrote on Truth Social, quote, Israel must immediately stop the bombing of Gaza so that we can get the hostages out quickly after Trump's plan without accepting all the conditions. The deal calls for a swap of all remaining hostages in Gaza for Palestinian prisoners held in Israel, as well as an eventual Israeli military withdrawal.
Thank you for watching Amish Shakil 5858. I am Amish Shakil. I hope you will visit again. Have a good life. Bye-bye.